Respect. Welcome back. Welcome back to Smitty's Corner. So what we're going to do on this one right here today, we're going to do part 2 of the story about Andre Thomas. So if you're just getting here, please, all I ask, smash the like button. That's it. Watch me one more time. Watch how I do it. Boom. That's it. That's all it takes. Other than that, I digress. My mic is muted. Let's go ahead, rock out, and let's get into part 2 about Andre Thomas. Thank you for tuning in.
Andre Lee Thomas is an American death row inmate known for removing both of his eyeballs in separate incidents and ingesting one of them. In 2004, Thomas killed his estranged wife Laura Boren, his 4-year-old son, and her 1-year-old daughter in Sherman, Texas. He cut open the chests of all 3 victims, and he removed the 2 children's hearts. Thomas, whose mental health problem
That much information wasn't disclosed in part 1. I don't remember the first video disclaiming that, but let's keep on going.
began with auditory hallucinations at about age 10, was in the 9th grade when Boren became pregnant with his child. They married when Thomas was 18, but they separated soon thereafter. In the weeks leading up to the murders, Thomas had suicidal thoughts, drank heavily, and used cold medication as a recreational drug. In jail a few days after his arrest, Thomas pulled one of his eyes out of its socket. A jury rejected his insanity defense and sentenced him to death on a capital murder conviction. In 2008, he removed...
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's Texas. That's just one of them states, they'll fry you. And I don't even mean to pull the race card, but I mean, this ninja off the whole white family. So, that's also going to sway a lot in those type of areas. So, yeah. But I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to say it. It's better he's not here. The way he contributed to the earth was removing himself from it. Now let that sit with you for a second. Let's rock out.
His other eye and ingested it. Thomas was diagnosed with schizophrenia after his arrest, and his case has raised ethical questions about executing the mentally ill. His trial verdict was upheld by a state criminal appeals court in 2008 and by a federal appeals court in 2021. While he is still under a death sentence, Thomas is housed in a Texas prison facility for inmates with psychiatric problems. Thomas was born on March 17, 1983, in Muskogee County, Oklahoma, to Rochelle and Danny Thomas. He had 5 brothers, and his mother raised the children mostly by herself in Sherman, Texas, which is 60 miles from Dallas. His mother was an alcoholic, suffered from depression, and had been sexually abused. When Thomas was a young boy, his home often had no running water, heat or electricity.
And a lot of these things can play a factor into how a person is brought up. But the harsh part about reality is, unfortunately, regardless of how you're brought up, still ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And regardless, everybody's not going to give you a pass. And so I just wanted to drive that point home more than anything. Not everybody going to want to hear your sob story, because in some folks' mind, we all got a sob story. What's so grand and new about yours, you see? So with that being said, I digress. My mic is muted. Let's rock out.
Other members of Thomas's family had problems with substance abuse and violence. 10 years before Thomas was born, his uncle was fatally shot by Thomas's grandmother's husband. Despite his domestic disadvantages, Thomas seemed to thrive for the first few years of his life. He attended a Baptist church in Sherman. A former Sunday school teacher described Thomas as a smart and respectful boy who often answered her questions before she could finish asking them. Family members said that Thomas was a curious person who enjoyed sketching futuristic cars as well as disassembling and reassembling old cars. He was in the gifted and talented program at his school. When Thomas was around 10 years old, his behavior changed. He told some of his schoolmates that he heard angels and demons arguing in his head. At one point he said he was Raiden, a fictional character from the video game Mortal Kombat, and he appeared to be sincere in his claim. He started smoking marijuana, which may have been an attempt to quiet the voices he was hearing. He was placed on probation at age 12. By the time he was 13, he had made 2 suicide attempts by cutting his wrists.
So, this is the thing that I've been kind of battling with. As somebody who definitely is a believer, right? And as somebody myself, I've had my bouts with, some depression and anxieties and things of that nature in life, like a lot of us have, right? Thing is that where I have a hard time with these type of scenarios is, I get it. We have to scientifically classify it and name it as something, so they call it schizophrenia. Brother, I'm gonna be honest with you. In my book, I don't care how, back in the day this may sound, but no, that's a possession. That spirits are real. And when we keep on looking at things in life from strictly and solely a physical factor, that's how we miss these signs and these things that intertwine with our dimension and the one that we can't see. But with that being said, I digress. My mic is muted. Let's rock out.
He had a series of arrests around age 15, including one for stealing a car. He was placed on suicide watch after developing suicidal thoughts during a short stay in juvenile detention, but he did not receive ongoing mental health services following his release. After Thomas had been dating a young woman named Laura Boren for several years, she became pregnant and gave birth in August 1999 to a baby they named Andre Jr. Thomas dropped out of school in 9th grade, and a high school equivalency diploma, and worked several jobs so that he could support Boren and the baby. He married Boren on his 18th birthday in 2001. She was 17. Thomas and Boren lived together briefly at Thomas's mother's house. 2 weeks after they got married, Thomas's mother forced them to move out of her house. At that point, Boren and her son moved in with her parents, while Thomas moved in with one of his brothers. Boren and Thomas separated about 4 months into their marriage. Boren later moved in with a new boyfriend, and they had a child, Leha Hughes, in 2003. After his marriage broke up, Thomas experienced more intense delusions and suicidal thoughts. He obsessed over apocalyptic concepts in the Book of Revelation, and he had difficulty keeping a job. Thomas was
I ain't gonna lie. I will say this though. Revelations is a deep, deep book. But at the same time, this is why I would say when it comes to factors like this, we got to be very careful who we allow to teach us the word, where we get our information from. And that's why we have to be if it's one thing you should be picky and choosy about is who you take from when it comes to what this word consists of. Because the fact is that a lot of people are being misled, and then people get confused. And, you can have folks that can have situations just like this right here, where this man don't know what's real, what's not. Now, I get it. There may be some brain malfunctions, if you want to call it. I get it. But a lot of things, honestly, around us are not as physical as you think. Let's rock out.
Accused of stabbing his brother during a fight, but he was not indicted, and his brother was committed for psychiatric treatment. Living on his own, Thomas had difficulty keeping the utilities paid, so Boren began limiting the amount of visitation with his son. Thomas had begun to believe that his estranged wife was Jezebel and that his son was the Antichrist. He thought that the meaning of life was contained in a message within the images on a US dollar bill, and he said he was experiencing déjà vu. He would sometimes cover his mouth with duct tape and refuse to speak to his family. In the spring of 2004, still struggling with long-standing alcohol abuse and psychological difficulties, Thomas began engaging in the recreational use of Coricidin cold medication. On March 5, A friend escorted him to a mental health clinic, where Thomas told the staff that he would step in front of a bus if he could not speak to someone. Clinic staff told him he should go to the emergency room, and they had a judge prepare an emergency detention order.
I personally believe that there are folks out here who, when they be wanting to, like, you know, the gouging out the eyes and all of that, bruh, that's not physical to me. That's an individual who wants to stop seeing what they're seeing. For whatever reason, some people are granted the ability, for whatever reason, to see things in another realm, and most aren't. Some people see things and it could be very pleasant. They can tell you about this and that. And you take it for how you want. I mean, it's you know, take it how you want. But then you also have people that will see things and it's very disturbing and it's very uncomfortable. Okay? So just keep that in mind. Let's rock out. Let's rock out.
Thomas did not report to the emergency room that day. About 3 weeks later, Thomas stabbed himself in the chest and went to the emergency room at Texoma Medical Center in nearby Denison. He told hospital personnel that he was trying to cross over into heaven. When the wound was determined not to be life-threatening, an emergency room physician began arranging for psychiatric commitment. While these arrangements were being made, Thomas walked out of the hospital. The physician notified the Denison Police Department that Thomas might be dangerous, but they apparently had no contact with Thomas, who walked a few miles to his home in Sherman. On March 27, 2004, 2 days after coming to the emergency room, Thomas went to Boren's third-floor apartment and kicked the door open. Boren's boyfriend was at work, but Boren was home with her 2 children. Thomas fatally stabbed her, cut open her chest and pulled out a portion of her lung, thinking he was actually removing her heart. He went to the bedroom shared by their 4-year-old son and Boren's 13-month-old daughter, fatally stabbed both children and cut their hearts out of their chests. After he killed the children, Thomas stabbed himself 3 times in the chest. Expecting to die from his wounds, Thomas went into the living room and lay next to Boren's body. When he realized he was not dying, he placed the victim's organs in his pockets and walked to his house. Once he
All right, so look, I still stand on what I say as far as he's better off not here. I'm just gonna say it, bruh. But I will say this. All of this information, and that man didn't get an insanity plea, I ain't gonna lie. Yeah, nah, he definitely, I mean, I would think you can get that, but we have to remember each state is different, how they determine these factors. It's a very intricate process in law when it comes to that whole insanity plea, especially with the crime as egregious as this right here. But let's keep on rocking out. Let's rock out.
returned home, he placed the organs in a bag and threw it in the trash. Thomas called his wife's parents and left a voicemail. Sherry, this is Andre. I need yours help. Something bad is happening to me and it keeps happening and I don't know what's going on. I need some help. I think I'm in hell. I need help. Somebody needs to come and help me. I need help bad. I'm desperate. I'm afraid to go to sleep. So when you get this message, come by the house, please. Hello? Thomas turned himself in at the Sherman Police Department, telling officers there that he thought God wanted him to kill the victims. He said he killed each victim with a separate knife because he thought there were demons inside the victims. If the victim's blood was allowed to mix, he reasoned, then the demons might survive. Thomas was taken to a hospital and underwent chest surgery. 5 days after the murders, while Thomas was in jail awaiting trial, he removed one of his eyes with his bare hands. According to one source, he had been reading the Bible when he came to Matthew 5:29, which said, "If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out." Another source said that after pulling the eye out, he quoted Mark 9:47, "And if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. It is better to enter the kingdom of God with one eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into hell."
So I mean, real question to all my believers out there. So, to all the Christian folks out there who go by the Bible, I really want y'all answer on this one. Do you think that that was his way of saving his soul? Now, mind you, that is what the word said, word for word. Gouge out it. And it's better to do that than so. In his mind, right? In his mind, no matter how kooky it may be to a lot of us out here, and to me, it just sounds extremely painful. No medication or sedative, goodness gracious. But was he really doing what God wanted him to do? Or was that moment right there still something a little more dark? But let's rock out. I find that interesting though.
Psychologists interviewed Thomas to determine his competence to stand trial, and they diagnosed Thomas with schizophrenia. Declared incompetent to stand trial, he was sent to North Texas State Hospital in mid-June 2004. After Thomas spent 47 days in the hospital, psychiatrist Joseph Black wrote to the court that Thomas suffered from drug-induced psychosis, saying that he was competent and that he might attempt to exaggerate his mental illness by engaging in self-harm or other aberrant behavior. Defense attorney...
Then just put him in that, what's that, the pillow room with the jacket like this? Just put him in one of those, you know, give him a couple scoops of Jell-O and stuff every once in a while, a little juice box, you know what I'm saying? Turn the TV on. I mean, I understand.
R.J. Haygood, who was ill with pancreatitis during the trial, later said he regretted not objecting to the introduction of Black's statement. On February 15, 2005, Thomas's murder trial began. He was only tried for the death of Boren's daughter. Thomas, who is black and had been in an interracial relationship with Boren, faced an all-white jury.
Did I not say it earlier? He in the state of I said it. This black dude is... I said it.
Questionnaire for potential jurors, 3 of the selected jurors and 1 alternate juror indicated that they were opposed to interracial couples marrying or having children. 1 juror indicated vigorous opposition, noting, "I don't believe God intended for this. We should stay with our bloodline." Sanity remained a central issue during the proceedings. Thomas's behavior in the courtroom has been described as almost catatonic at times, and he snacked on Skittles during graphic testimony. Thomas's attorneys put forward an insanity defense. The state said that Thomas's mental illness was caused by or worsened by drug use.
I would say this though, I find that fascinating because from what I understand, church and state not supposed to mix, but I guess it mixed that day with this brother. Let's rock out. They was gonna fry him regardless, as we know.
They cited Texas law that invalidates an insanity defense if the mental condition was the result of voluntary intoxication. While the defense said that Thomas's removal of his own eye showed that he was insane, prosecutors said that the eye incident was indicative of an impulsive act rather than insanity. Thomas was convicted of capital murder and given a death sentence. After receiving his death sentence, Thomas was sent to the Polunsky Unit, the Texas Department of Criminal Justice prison that houses male death row inmates. He said he continued to hear voices, and he said he saw 6-inch tall demons coming out of the prison walls and playing music from the band Queen. He attempted suicide in July 2008, this time by cutting into the front of his neck with a sharp object. The wound required 8
And you know what's crazy? The band Queen, along with a lot of others, they actually, god dang it, they actually have admitted to being like in that occult type thing, you know, the Satan worshiping and all of that other stuff. They talk about selling their souls, the whole bit. So that's funny that he even said that band in particular, like 6-inch demons playing music. Wow, bruh. I mean, but I don't know. If I say that I'm a believer, am I to deny what this man is seeing? Or do we just call him crazy? And then still call ourselves believers? just because we haven't seen what that man has seen. So there's so many different angles to this, man. But let's keep going. Let's keep going.
In October 2008, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld Thomas's conviction. In a concurring opinion, Judge Kathy Cochran wrote, "Although reasonable people might well differ on the questions of whether this applicant was sane at the time he committed these murders or competent at the time he was tried, those issues were appropriately addressed by the defense, the prosecution, trial judge, and the jury during the trial. This is a sad case. Applicant is clearly crazy, but he is also sane under Texas law." On December 9th, 2008.
See? And I was saying, I've never been to Texas. I don't know anything about their laws, but I do know that they slam that hammer. Oh, they slam that hammer. But yeah, under now see, maybe if this was in a different state, he might have got the pillow room with the jello. You see what I'm saying? But because that man was in Texas, we ain't got time to fund that. We not housing him. See, they thinking about what it's going to cost and everything. So we supposed to pay to put this triple homicide murderer up? You got us effed up. We going to fry him. And so that's why we got to think about when we do certain things in certain states, you better know what state you in. Let's keep on rocking out.
Thomas removed his left eye and ate it. Thomas said he ingested his eye to prevent the United States federal government from reading his thoughts. He was treated at a hospital in Tyler and then transferred to TDCJ's Jester 4 unit, which houses Texas prisoners with mental health problems. Thomas's trial attorney said she was glad that Thomas would finally get the psychiatric care they had been requesting. In early 2020, Thomas's case was brought before the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. Attorney Catherine Carroll said that Thomas's original legal representation was ineffective, as his trial attorneys failed to object to the selection of the 3 jurors with a bias against interracial marriages. She also said that trial counsel did not present an accurate account of Thomas's long-standing psychiatric problems, did not request a competency hearing, and presented a psychiatrist as an expert witness that did not have expertise in cases where mental illness was allegedly drug-induced. In response to the appeal, prosecutors said that while there was evidence to support Thomas's mental illness, he was not insane.
Wow.
In April 2021,
Wow.
the Fifth Circuit upheld the trial court's verdict. Thomas.
So, on that note right there, right? Because we're going to do a part 3 as well. But I just want y'all to really pay attention to that. Now, this is something else I want to know. Like, in your mind, do you think that, considering it's Texas, it's a black dude that killed an all-white family, do you think that if this was a white guy and did exactly everything to a T that this man has done, do you think he would have got off? Yes or no, and or why do you feel that way? I really want to know from you. Because I'm not going to lie, in my opinion, Texas, I would maybe say no. And I'm going to tell you why I say no, even if he was white. Because once upon a time, there was a man named, I think it was Charles Manson. He didn't get out. And he died in there. In the same state, if I'm not mistaken. So, let's keep on rocking out. Let's keep on rocking out.
This case has raised questions about the laws governing insanity defenses, especially on the concept of distinguishing right from wrong. The wording of Texas law was more favorable to such defenses until 1982, when there was public outcry following the acquittal of John Hinckley Jr. after his assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan. Politicians have attempted legislative changes to codify the idea that a sane defendant should be one who appreciates the difference between right and wrong. Such wording changes have been rejected in the Texas legislature several times.
It just hit me. And if anybody missed that, it just hit me. So what's being said right here primarily is you have to 100% know the difference between right and wrong. And so where he messed up was the whole like gouging out his eye because he didn't want to go to hell. That's knowing right and wrong. You see? So as crazy as the acts were, man, that's crazy, bruh. That is crazy. Because of everything he was doing, like saying the kids were evil, she's Jezebel, Antichrist, that's right and wrong. If he just did it and was like, then wow, like you can't even be 98% in Texas. You have to be 100% check mark every box. Ain't that something? Let's rock out.
A defendant acquitted on an insanity defense usually goes to a psychiatric hospital and remains under supervision of the court even if he or she is eventually released. Texas law prohibits the defense or the prosecution from telling jurors what will happen to a defendant in the case of such an acquittal. Texas Representative Sinfronia Thompson introduced House Bill 1150, which would have included the wording change from know to appreciate and would have required that jurors were informed of the possible consequences of acquittal for defendants like
Wow. So they changed the wording, I think she said in 1958, from knowing the difference of right and wrong to appreciating the difference from right and wrong. But I wonder, I don't know, is there a difference between the person who knows the difference between right and wrong and the person who appreciates the difference between right and wrong? Just in your book, you let me know.
Thomas who pursue an insanity defense. The bill was left pending in a subcommittee in 2009. In a 2015 publication, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights highlighted the ethical questions in the cases of Thomas and fellow Texas death row inmate Scott Panetti, saying that through no fault of their own, they are tormented souls suffering from devastating afflictions that leave them unable to think and reason like people who are not so